And 20 minutes with Deputy Barry. Deputy Howland has usefully offered me a good lead into my opening comments by once again raising the spectre of populism and the evil that it represents and the need to resist it at all accounts. This apparently is the danger we're facing, whatever populism might be. A rather amorphous term, if ever there was one. But, of course, what we're dealing with here is a problem of a judicial system that is dominated by a very small, self-perpetuating elite. That's what it is. It's drawn from a very, very small pool. The judicial system and the barristers, drawn from a very, very small pool, largely controlled by the Honourable Society of the King's Inn. Interesting in and of itself. I learnt a little bit about that chatting to somebody on the phone today. Set up by King Henry VIII to ensure that we control access to the bar and keep the Catholics out. Initially, that was the original purpose of the Honourable Society. And this is the only place you can become a barrister. And as we know, barristers, judges aren't exclusively all barristers, but they're overwhelmingly barristers. And this Honourable Society set up by King Henry VIII, that is the only place that trains barristers, there's no statutory basis for it. There's no proper statutory basis for it. In law that we have democratically decided. It literally owes its origins back to Henry VIII. I mean, it's quite extraordinary and was set up precisely on an exclusivist basis to ensure a very small, well-vetted elite controlled who got to be a barrister and who, in effect, controlled the legal system and who was kept out. And they still do it because inside the Honourable Society of the King's Inn, I've discovered there's a little secret society inside it called the Benchers. So you have the inner bench and you have the outer bench. And the Benchers, who any judge, anybody who's made a judge, automatically becomes a member of the Benchers. That's quite extraordinary. A secret society that have secret dinners. I believe Cherry and Tony Blair, incredibly, are members of the Benchers in the Honourable Society of the King's Inn, among others. And I believe they have some very interesting people. None of us ever find out about these dinners, which are held regularly. To be called to the bar, a bencher has to sign off on it. These benchers, I would say, all of the, because of the way it works, all of the people, both in the sort of old system, the Judicial Appointments, what was it called, Board, and now the Appointments Commission, the judge element, and quite a few others, I think 5 I count, would probably be members of the benchers. The Chief Justice, the President of the Court of Appeal, the President of the High Court, the Attorney General, apparently sort of automatically becomes a member. And what's incredible is you can be mandatorily made a member of this even if you don't want to be a member, which is really quite extraordinary. And, you know, it begs a serious question about actually the sort of, you know, the independence of the judiciary and how it's sort of can't be questioned, because you can have people who are senior benchers, who are barristers, and judges who are more junior in this secret society of the benchers, who socialise together, who could be chatting before cases. But if you're a barrister who isn't a member of the benchers, there is a very serious potential of this secret society effectively corrupting the balance in the hearing of cases. And this group can disbar barristers. They can disbar them. Right? I mean, this is absolutely extraordinary, and there's no statutory basis to this stuff. So this is how the upper echelons of the legal system in this country work. Now, I would say, apart from this, and I welcome the thrust of it, and insofar as you identify the completely unacceptable situation that, for example, a third of judges are actually directly connected to the political parties, cronies of the political parties, and that even up as recently as the last few weeks, people who are former members of Fine Gael, close connections of Fine Gael, get appointed as judges. And, I mean, the fact the Constitution requires it, that there is a big problem constitutionally even to the fact that the government are the people who appoint judges. And, I mean, it makes me... I sort of find it hard to even understand how people can talk about the separation of powers and the independence of the judiciary when that's the case. It just doesn't make any sense to me that people can even talk about that with a straight face. I hear Jim O'Callaghan say, well, how could you possibly impugn the judiciary and the way they act and behave and so on? Well, sorry, I think we can impugn them, we can hold them to account, we can criticise decisions we make, and we bloody well should. Right? You implied that there was nothing wrong with the political connections, and that to suggest that those political connections meant that they were maybe recruiting other judges on the basis of their political connections was nonsense. Well, I put it to you that it is complete nonsense to suggest that people who were appointed because of their connections to political parties, or that matter appointed by governments, aren't in some way influenced by the fact that those are the people who appointed or selected them. That has to have some impact, and to my mind, it is a worrying impact. So I think the whole thing needs to be shaken up. Now, I will support this going to the next stage for that reason. And in principle, I like the idea of a majority of lay representatives. But there's a hell of a lot more to be done than that. We need to broaden and democratise the base of the entire legal and judicial system, and to stop it being an elitist club dominated by secret societies like the benchers, or a monopoly being held by the King's Inn as to who can become a barrister, and therefore their members having a disproportionate influence. Even on this new committee you're talking about, they will still have 5 members, these benchers, a secret society influence on this new commission over who would be recommended or considered to be acceptable and the right kind of person to be a judge and all the rest of it. That's completely unacceptable. And it really brings to mind the expression one law for the rich and one law for the poor. Not just in the dispensation of the law, but literally in how the law is structured. And that's the way it works all the way up the line, at every level. Working class people, the vast majority of people, their experience of court is a thing called the district court. You go in, and it's industrial justice, production line justice. No juries. These judges, all mandatory members of the Benchers Society with their secret lunches and so on, dispensing justice on the poor. But if you're rich, you can afford to go into the higher courts. That's a fact. I don't know why you're laughing, Charlie, because that's a fact. Poor people cannot access the same level of justice as rich people. That's a fact. The higher echelons of the judiciary, of barristers, overwhelmingly from private schools, from better-off backgrounds, and then little inner circle groups vetting and selecting who gets into the higher echelons. That is the reality of what's going on. Right, so the simple things we need to start doing. The monopoly of the King's Inn should be ended. Full stop. UCD should be able to train up barristers and judges, UCG, other universities, Trinity or whatever. It shouldn't be just the property of the King's Inn and controlled by benchers or whatever the hell they are. That needs to end. The idea that we can't criticise judges, their decisions, that has to end. We should absolutely have the right to criticism, and they should have the right to criticise us as well. The politicians, absolutely. I have no problem with that. And I'll just conclude in my last 15 seconds. However, I have a problem. You see, even if we want to open it up, and I welcome the thrust of this bill in some respects, in that it's highlighting that, the Public Appointment Service, as the other side of the debate have said, that's a problem too. Civil servants. Who's selecting them? Why can't this be done anymore? I mean, who knows who the Public Appointment Service or TLAC are? Who selects them? They're a self-perpetuating elite as well. That's not a good enough way to select judges, or indeed the permanent government at the General Secretary level of government departments.